Alice Cooper's been supportive in theory. So we've been on his show, I think 2 or 3 times. And actually, because of Alice, in theory, he's already had 2 top 10 hits. It's because of Alice.
Drunk, metal, prog, and everything in between. Welcome to this episode of Talkin' Rock with Meltdown. Don't forget to follow the audio-only Talkin' Rock podcast on all podcast platforms. And now, it's time for today's conversation. Here's Meltdown.
I'm sorry, Mike, you're making coffee right now? Is that what you said?
I'm making coffee. How about that?
Yeah, where are you at?
I'm in Muscle Shoals.
Okay, so it's not exactly the crack of dawn out there.
No, not really. I'm recuperating from. It's just been a long several months, but I just did a studio run 2 days ago, and when I'm doing a studio run, this one was like a 16-hour run. So I started, I think, about 2 in the afternoon. I got home at 6 in the morning. So it throws my whole clock off for a couple of days.
So, I see. A few days ago, you did this.
That was yesterday. I came in at 6:30 in the morning. Yeah, something like that.
No, I think I saw on your Facebook, it says Muscle Shoals, Alabama. So do you work there?
I live here now. I'm originally a New Yorker.
Okay.
Then a Californian, and for the last 8 years, I've been in Muscle Shoals.
Okay. I guess as like a guitar player of your ilk, that's kind of a place where you probably long to be, right?
It's great for music. It's great for the studio world. There's probably a higher concentration of studios in a 10-mile radius than probably anywhere in the world here.
Yeah, I live up here, obviously in Detroit, and there's some studios up here where there's been a lot of classic albums made. Rust Belt Studios is right down the road where Alice Cooper records. Kid Rock recorded his debut, Greta Van Fleet. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Pearl Studios, where Ted Nugent recorded a lot of stuff here, Bob Seger and all that. So, yeah, there's a few of them up here. But we don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about In Theory and what you guys have going on.
Sure.
Normally, when I interview bands, a lot of the bands I already kind of know about. I know a little bit about you guys, but I didn't want to get into the weeds too much because I wanted you to tell everybody about your band and what you have going on. 'Cause you got some really cool stuff in the works.
Sure. We would need like a 10-hour show to talk about the band. There's such a long path to it.
But what kind of band are you? For people that don't know what In Theory is, tell me about like what you guys do.
Well, the best way I can say is we're like either a modern Zeppelin or like a swampy Soundgarden is the best way to describe our sound. Singer Tony Cavino, he's got a Cornell thing, but he's definitely got a range of a plant. And I think the fact that I'm down here in Muscle Shoals, I think that the R&B and the blues have rubbed off on me. But I'm more of a rock guy, but still the blues is just seeped into me big time.
I was gonna say it kind of speaks to you. So you got this new Led Zeppelin cover. Speaking of Zeppelin, with Eric Gales out. Tell us about that, and how does one get Eric Gales to play on one of your tracks?
That's the $1,000,000 question. I get that all the time.
Right.
Well, with Eric, how I got him to play was through Victor Wooten. Do you know Victor?
I know that. Refresh my memory.
All right. He's probably one of the most historic bass players in history. So if you're in a Rolling Stone, most influential bass players in history, Victor's usually number 4, number 5 in history. And what was happening, Victor's a family friend. Eric has been one of my idols, and Eric was playing at one of his camps. So I had called up Victor. I said, I want to come up and play. But unfortunately, on the flip side of the thing, outside of In Theory and the producing and doing all the touring and the companies that I own, I'm also a caretaker for my parents. So 2 weeks out of the month, I take care of my father and mother. My father has last stage of dementia. He's blind. My mother's deaf. And it's a whole long thing. But essentially, I did 2 weeks. My sister does 2 weeks, and we have someone try to fill in the date so I can go on the road. I can do other things. But on this particular time, I couldn't make it up because I had to take care of my parents. So I didn't get to meet with Eric. And sure enough, by fate, or however you want to, if you believe in those things, fate, destiny, maybe it was 2 or 3 weeks later, Eric was playing by my parents' house. And so I reached out to Eric and said, Victor's been trying to reach us. And and then Eric got back to me. He goes, "Well, come down to sound check. Let's see how we vibe. Let's see what we got." So I went down to sound check, and in the most polite way. I don't know if you can curse on your show, but he's like,
Sure.
fuck sound check. He goes, "Let's do something." Okay. I mean, to me, that's way better. Right.
Yeah,
So,
right.
and this was in October. So he goes, "Look, after the tour, he goes, I have a place, I have a studio by my place. Let's do something." So I thought he was either for real or he was, just being polite. And so I called him first week of December, and I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" He says, "Well," it was the same thing. "What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, you know what? Let's do a song." I had the band In Theory. "Let's do a song. Let's have you as a guest." He says, "Okay." And he goes, looked at his calendar. He goes, "I got these 2 days open," whatever they were. And I just jumped in the studio. I think it was like the Tuesday, and I had to be there Friday afternoon. So Tuesday, I jumped in, put one set of rhythm section in. It didn't work out with that rhythm section. Then I brought in some heavyweights. So I brought in Glenn Sobel from Alice Cooper, Hollywood Vampires, to be the
Hmm.
drummer. I brought in the bass player from Jason Isbell, it's Joe Hart. And I brought in Clayton Ivey, who's one of the original Swampers and all that. And of course, the singer from In Theory, and myself. Um, Finished the tracks. That Thursday night, it was such a challenge. Even that night, the bass player had COVID. So we actually had to record his tracks, even though it was a half mile away, with the video screen and through this app called Audio Movers. So whatever he was playing was going right through my speakers in the studio, so I could actually hear it in real time. And so we got his thing done. It was maybe 9 o'clock that night, 10 o'clock. Next morning, I'm in Greensboro. I mean, I had to fly to Raleigh. Then I was in Greensboro, and then Eric and I proceeded to record the track. And from there it was magic.
That's awesome. And so this track's obviously a Zeppelin cover. You just kind of, mentioned Zeppelin, obviously a huge influence on you.
It's a yes and a no. That's a good question. When I was younger, of course, you listen to all the iconic Zeppelin riffs. But on the reason I picked that song is part of my daily practicing. I practice this on YouTube. There's things that catch my ear, and strangely enough, the version I always practice to is the one by the band Europe. They do the same version, but they play with the orchestra.
I never
And
heard that. I'll have to look that up.
yeah, it's really cool. They do it live. So they did a great version. The guitar player killed it on it. But the reason I picked their version is because when Zeppelin does it, the tempos are all over the place. And if I was going to try to lock something to a grid and have the singer play to something structured, it just wasn't going to work. So I was like, well, if it's to the orchestra, it'll be right in line in time. Oh no, it wasn't. Well, so the poor singer. I made him sing the entire track. He spent a couple of days doing it, and then the day I was bringing everybody in, like nothing's going to line up. So I gave him an hour. So he redid all the vocals that you hear on the record. It was first take in an hour, and an angry singer, and it came out fantastic. But really, yeah. So that was it. So it was the Europe version, and then by the time Eric and I got on it, we didn't verbally say what we wanted to do as far as choice of notes, but I think Eric and I really made it our own. We didn't do the Jimmy Page licks. We didn't do, except for the bam, 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 everything else, our choice of notes is us, how we would play it. I mean, if you listen to the song, there's even like little Queen elements. There's a little, what Eric pointed out to me, what I was doing, he goes, "That's a little bit like the Beatles, a little, I want you so bad." That
Yeah.
song, sure. He goes, if you hear it, the Beatles song, and you hear that, you can hear some of the similarities. And if you hear very early Queen, you hear some of that. But again, it wasn't on purpose. It's just as Eric and I were progressing on it, so.
Yeah, just what comes out of you with your influences and whatnot. So also you're working with Vinny Appice and Perry Richardson, right? On some tracks.
Yeah, on 2 tracks that are coming out, Vinny did 2 of the tracks, and yeah, Vinny's a monster.
Yeah.
I think people will like it. And then Perry, he's another guy. He's just been a long time friend, and it's like, it's one of those like, "Perry, you want to do something?" He's like, "Sure, come on up." South Carolina, and we only put one of his tracks on, but he cut 4 tracks with us. So, but on this album, we're just using one with him. And then the other one that we're working with, and the release is coming out, I think in about 2 weeks, is with, Tommy Henriksen.
Yeah.
So that one is coming out, I think, actually the 16th, May 16th, is the singles coming out, and that'll be on the album as well. And that's like if Aerosmith and Mutt Lange had a baby in 2025, that's what that song sounds like.
Okay.
And we've been doing a lot of social media pushing on that, and Tommy's been wonderful on that. And actually, he's in the video as a band member, which was kind of cool that he did that. Even though he's in the Vampires and he's got his Crossbone Scully band, but he was very gracious to jump into that. But him and I worked on that for quite a long time to pull it off, and that's a whole story with the Alice Cooper camp and us. And
I was just thinking about that. Yeah, you keep bringing up guys that played with Alice.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I met Glenn actually, Glenn Sobel, who played on Since I've Been Loving You, through Tommy. It was I met him backstage, and when I was having issues, when I was like, if we're gonna do a thing with Eric, it's gotta be great, it can't be good. And I'm not sure if you ever spoke with Tom, but I lost a lot of my New York, Long Island accent, but his is still thick. It's really right. So he goes, Mike, you fucking talk to fucking Glenn. He'll fucking do it. And I called up Glenn that night, and Glenn and I were on the phone again, like for 2 hours that Tuesday night from 8 to 10. And while I was on the phone with him, he was trying to locate engineers and techs, and by 11 o'clock that night, he said, "Yep, I can do it." It was that Thursday morning, and then I said the bass player that night. But the Cooper Camp has been a really interesting thing for us. The funny thing is, with Tommy and I, there was a person dear to Tommy and myself that has been trying to connect us. And Tommy and I, through our lives, I was opening up for Tommy when I was 15, and then we've written in the late 90s, and then there's so many things. Our lives, every few years, we're in each other's lives. And this particular time, we were in each other's lives. It was just really funny. As this person goes, "Oh yeah, I'm a fan of Alice Cooper," and then I go, "Oh, it's Tommy. Tommy's in the band." So that's how it was like that. And finally, there were two things going on. So before Alice and them all knew that I was involved with Tommy, Alice Cooper's been a supporter of In Theory. So we've been on his show, I think 2 or 3 times. And actually, because of Alice, In Theory's already had 2 top 10 hits. It's because of Alice. And he didn't know anything about Tommy and no connection.
Now, wait a second. For 1 second. You've been on Alice's radio show?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you were talking about if you opened up for Alice for the show. So go ahead.
Yeah, we've been on both the shows, his first incarnation and his current show.
Okay.
And I believe we're going to be on the show again with this next single. But the funny thing is, so I went out there to this person wanted to connect me with Tommy, and sure enough, they ran into Tommy at breakfast at the hotel, and I get a text. "I told Tommy you were here. He wants to meet you for breakfast." Cool. And it was great. Both of us, man, we were just so happy to see each other. It was, I called it 2 Long Island dudes just getting together, bear hugging each other. And probably within 10, 15 minutes of talking, we're like, we got to do something together. And we just started talking. And then that night, it was interesting. He was asking me about how I like the set, his new sound, and all that. But the very next day, I saw them again. And this other person that was with me, they bought like the passes, it's like $900, to meet Alice, right? The meet and greet. And I told Tommy about it, and Tommy's like, I'll get you one. Don't worry about it. I'll get you one. Okay. Because this other person was asking Tommy, can I transfer it to Mike? Because this other person, has met Alice, way too many times, And Tommy's like, no, don't worry about it. I'll get you a pass. So I'm in line, and which I thought was a really one of, like, remember we were talking about fate and destiny and all that stuff. I was talking to this person, and they go, well, why don't you go in by yourself? I go, no. I go, you've met Alice, Alice, the photographer, all the people back there. I said, it'll be good for you to introduce me to these people. So the funny thing, I go back there, and I see Alice. I just want to thank her. You've been We've been on your show several times, and because of you, we've charted. And we just started talking. Now there was his assistant, and his assistant was watching the whole thing, and he's the photographer. And he grabs the person that was with me. He says, "Is that Mike Mostert?" I said, "Yeah, that's Mike. That's Mike Mostert." And this guy, by the way, has also been Alice's personal assistant for 20 years, something like that.
Yeah, I know
And
what you're talking about, but go ahead.
all right, yeah. And it was almost like he was crying. He was so happy. He stopped my thing with Alice. He goes, "Alice, that's my boss." He goes, "That's my old boss, Alice." And then Alice was so fun. He went from obviously being very cordial. He's always a nice guy. He had the biggest smile on his face, and he grabbed the guy and said, "Get in the picture. You got to be in the picture with the bosses. It's your bosses." And yeah, and I mean, and I always laugh. I said, "Thank God I wasn't an asshole as a boss," you know. But what a moment. I mean, I mean, it was emotional to me as well, where he was just like, "Oh my God, it's Mike." And then I started telling Alice, I'm working with Tommy, and the whole history with that. And he goes, "Look, man, so I'm like, Tommy's the glue of Alice Cooper. He's the glue of vampires." And then this is, and this is so Alice from what I know of him. He goes, "Well, do you have passes? Did you see Tommy? Did you need anything?" I go, "No, no." I said, "I've been seeing Tommy for breakfast every morning." And after the show, he's, "Okay, I just want to make sure if you need anything, you just let me know." I'm
Mm.
like, "Oh, that's cool." And then we end up talking for, about 40 minutes while everybody who paid is behind us. And then sure enough, like the sister and I, we reconnected after all these years. She was my employee for 3 years or so. And it was nice. And I've seen him now a bunch of times in Nashville. And every time I go see Cooper, I know I get to see Tommy and Sobel. And, of course, we can say his name, Kyler. So you get to see him as well. So it's cool. It's been the reuniting of a lot of friends.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I think that Tommy's. I don't know. I don't even know if I ever met Tommy before, but Glenn and Ryan, I've talked with a bunch. Nita, I've talked with a bunch of times, and Alice, I've had the privilege to interview and meet a bunch of times. So it's really cool. Hey, the band, In Theory, it's kind of funny because right now there's several bands with the word theory in the title.
Right.
Sleep Theory, Theory of a Dead Man. Just off the top of my head, did it ever cross your mind when you named the band?
No, it's so funny. How we got the name is there was the first incarnation of In Theory. And when people say, "Well, in theory, this is supposed to work. In
Oh,
theory, that's supposed to work." And so we just thought it was funny. And we're like, "Yeah, that sounds like a good name for a band." So like in theory, we're a band. In theory, yeah, I can play guitar. It was stupid, but yeah, that's how we came up with the name.
what do you guys have coming up for the rest of the year here? You got a summer tour or anything you're going to hop on?
Yeah, we're still touring. We have shows where we have some shows. I think some coming up in Knoxville. We just played your area, by the way. We played the Token. Is that
Oh,
in
you
Detroit?
did? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, no
Last week.
kidding. How long ago was that?
That was not even 10 days ago. It was
With who?
us and the band Angel.
Oh, no kidding. So did you see Angel play that night?
Yeah, we opened up for Angel that night. Yeah.
It's funny. I had a thing to do one night when they were in town, and I really wanted to see them. And I didn't realize it was like on a Sunday or something. And the show, they went on stage at like 7:30 or something. So I get there at like 9:30, and like the place is empty. I'm like, what is going on here?
So
And
so yeah, we opened up from that was last year. We played on a Sunday. Yeah, you're
yeah,
right.
Sunday. Oh, I
Yep.
didn't know that. Yeah,
Yep.
so I went there that night, and Punky and a couple of the other guys signed a few of my Angel albums. And it's funny because I didn't grow up knowing anything about Angel. Just I don't know. I grew up in the '80s and stuff, but I never knew anything about Angel. And I was at a record store one time. My wife's like, "You got to get this Angel record," so I bought it for like $1 or something. Then I put it on like 5 months later. I'm like, "Man, I love this!" And now I got a bunch of Angel albums.
Yeah, there's another. I have stories apparently, right? I get the Cooper story now story. Um, Angel was an interesting thing for me because growing up, when my brother was 3 years older than me. So, when you're 11, they're 14, they're a big influence in your life.
Yeah.
And he was a bass player. And I was an emerging rock star at 11 years old, in my mind.
Yeah.
And, but the first three records he got me was Aerosmith Rocks, Kiss Alive, and then Angel on Earth as It Is on Heaven.
Hmm.
And I still remember that cover. You can turn it upside down. It's the same,
Yeah.
no matter how you turn it. And at 11 years old, my brother used to call me Punky for Punky Meadows. And last year, we've done, I think now 6 six different legs with Angel.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, and um, so for me, I mean, to play with Angel was kind of, again, it was a very moving thing because my brother used to call me Punky, and unfortunately, my brother died at 30 years old in a car accident.
Mm.
And last year, when the first leg of the tour got announced, it was actually on his birthday, my brother's birthday.
Mm.
So
Wow.
so I told Punky the story the first time I met him. And, and again, as a kid, I was like, oh my God, Punky. And but since then, we've become really good friends. And Punky and I have been talking about doing something again. His bucket list is to come here in Muscle Shoals and play.
Mm.
And he's a big blues guy as well. So we talk about our favorite guitar players, what he wants to do. He's not that far from me. I think he lives up in North Carolina. So we're just trying to figure out a time when he can do it and I can do it. And we're going to lay down, a couple of tracks. And we even made the joke of calling it the two Punkies. He calls me Punky Mozart and Punky Meadows. So we've tossed some ideas around. It's just, will scheduling allow it to happen is the thing.
Talking to you, it's kind of funny because I just saw the movie Sinners a couple weeks ago. Are you familiar
Oh
with
yeah,
that?
yeah. Gals is on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, and it also it revolves around a blues player to a certain degree, and it's down south. I'm not exactly sure where. I know it said it in the beginning of the movie, but I can't recall. I can't recall because I was sitting in the theater and the couple next to me would not stop talking.
I think it's in Memphis because Eric Gales is on the soundtrack of that. And I'm not sure if there's I think he does two of the tracks. Oh my God. I'm not sure if you listen to it, but listen to that track in headphones or earbuds, and Eric's guitar on that is just ridiculous. He plays with an orchestra. And one of the cool things that they did, usually when you play with an orchestra, you're trying to sound like the orchestra, right? You're doing almost classical theme type of music. Whoever was the director on this, or music supervisor, had the blues players. I think that Buddy Guy, I think definitely Gales, maybe Marcus King, maybe one other blues guys, but they were actually playing blues style over an orchestra. And sonically, it is amazing. It's funny. I was actually at the Talkin Lounge, going to the Talkin Lounge when I heard it for the first time, and I put my earbuds in, and I was like, wow, that's just amazing.
I'll have to check that out. I don't recall that, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff. BB, I think, yeah, BB plays. He's got a small part in it.
Right? Yeah. So then it's got to be in Memphis.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to give it away because it's a small part, but it's actually kind of a large part, actually. So I don't.
So I didn't get to see the movie, but like I said, the first I heard about it was Gales was talking about it on our drive up from Muscle Shoals to Detroit.
That's so cool. Well, next time you come to Detroit, you definitely have to swing by. So how can people check you out? You got an EP out right now, or is that coming out?
Well, yes, we do. We've put out two EPs, and what we're doing right now, we have a new distributor, and it's called Deco. But Deco, we're actually distributed through Warner. So on digital, we're technically Warner, and when the physical album comes out, not our singles, will be on Warner Brothers United States. Will be on Cargo Records in the United Kingdom. So what we did is, while we do have two EPs previously, we put out the single with Eric that came out maybe 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then on the 16th, we put out the single with Tommy. And then on Friday the 13th, scary, scary. That's when we put out the full album, which also includes Eric and Vinny Appice and Perry Richardson and Tommy Hendricks. That's a whole word, a lot to say.
Yeah.
Perry Richardson, Tommy Hendrickson. Long names that rhyme. So that comes out on June 13th, the full album. And then we'll take it from there.
That's cool. Well, listen, Mike, great to talk to you, and good luck with everything. The song is out; it's killer. The old Zeppelin cover, and man, just working with some of those legends. It's really cool.
Thank you. I appreciate it.